Not gonna lie, part of me just wanted to keep that music cranked and give you an entire aerial montage. I got a full video of clips like this. I discovered the bomber killer loadout on the fighter plane, and I have been wreaking havoc with this thing. I'm back in the air again, flying and playing my heart out, enjoying a whole new area of Battlefield that I really haven't explored much since Battlefield 3 for the most part. I did a little bit of flying in Battlefield 4, didn't enjoy it, thought it was just lock-on central, and kind of gave it up. Battlefield 1, no more lock-ons, pure aerial combat mayhem. I am loving it. Is it balanced? Not really. Does aerial warfare feel completely separated from ground warfare? Yeah, for the most part. But just listen to these sound effects. DICE has always been pushing the boundaries with just how good they can make their games sound, and I think Battlefield 1 is no exception. Without question, it is one of the best sounding Battlefield games I have ever played, and it really goes a long way into selling the aerial combat. Granted, the aerial combat is very arcadey. Any flight sim fan out there is probably going to look at this and sort of turn their nose up towards it. But for a Battlefield fan and somebody who doesn't mind more arcadey, over-the-top, explosion-intensive aerial warfare, then this is like a dream come true. Now, if you remember my coverage of the Battlefield 1 alpha, you might recall me enjoying airplane combat, but also feeling like it didn't react with the ground in a serious enough way. Fighters have now been upgraded, and the bomber killer loadout has these rockets on the wing, 6 rockets to be precise, and they can do splash damage to infantry. I believe one rocket will do about 34 damage, so you kind of have to land 3 rockets near an infantry. It allows you to kill at least 1 infantry on a strafing run if your aim is decent. However, the rockets are really good at taking out other aircraft. Bombers specifically, hence the name of the loadout for this fighter. You can actually take out an entire 3-manned bomber on one pass if you land enough rocket shots. In fact, I'd say it's almost too powerful at times, where I've been able to take out entire kitted out bombers before they even had a chance to respond to me. Definitely fun for me, not so fun for the guys trying to make the bomber work. In fact, I feel kind of bad for them because I feel like the bomber is one of the more underpowered aircraft in the game right now. Yeah, you might have been killed by it once or twice, but do you recall a lot of instances of getting bombed by bombers and killed and being like, man, those air targets are so powerful, they're really disrupting my ground gameplay? I certainly don't. I felt that way about aircraft in Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. A good pilot in an attack jet or a good helicopter pilot could absolutely disrupt some of that ground gameplay, and so taking them out became a priority. Battlefield 1, it doesn't really feel that way. For the most part, it feels like most games just have 2 separate battles going on, one for the battle of the sky and the other one for the battle of the ground, and rarely do they interact with one another. Yeah, I've been shot down by AA guns a bunch, and I've killed a few infantry and horseback riders, but for the most part I don't feel like my aerial presence is really disrupting the ground flow. I did have some fun moments while playing Squad Up, where I was able to sort of call out targets for my friendlies on the ground, tell them that there was enemies on the cliffs above them or something like that, and occasionally do a strafe by and take out a target that was a potential threat, which felt very cool. But the actual occurrences of that were fairly rare, to the point where it still felt like I wasn't having that big of an effect overall. That being said, with this specific loadout, I was able to be a little bit more competitive, fighting for the top seed on that scoreboard. However, that was largely reliant on my ability to take out fully loaded bombers frequently, because that's worth a lot of points right there. Everything else isn't really worth that many points. Funny enough, taking out other airplanes is worth the most points, and if I do a strafing run on an infantry or something like that, it's worth hardly anything. Not to mention, it takes so long to set up a strafing run. By the time I'm able to set up a secondary strafing run, that infantry I killed the first time around is probably already respawned, and the lack of a ticket system tied into lives doesn't really make me feel like I'm achieving much with it anyway. Now, one nifty little trick is capturing E-point from the air. As you can see here, it's got a fairly big radius. Fighter planes can turn fast enough to capture it. I would imagine attack planes can do this as well. If somebody's on the ground fighting with you for the point, then you're not going to be able to capture it. So I was only really able to capture E point during the very start of the round when nobody was there competing with me for it, and I was lucky enough to not have any other fighters fighting with me. You could argue that this is an easy way to capture E point, but when I tried it later in the game, I wasn't able to because people were able to spawn at E point and contest it, and I couldn't really take them out, especially if they were hiding in a building. I have no chance. All right, now let's talk about this loadout a bit. Obviously, the main reason to pick this loadout is the 6 dumbfire rockets that you get on your wings. They're a little bit tricky. I recommend getting as close to the enemy plane as possible, and you can absolutely destroy them in one volley. Bombers will take a few hits. I've seen smaller aircraft go down in one hit. I'm not sure if they were previously damaged, but they die fast. And as you can see there, I just got 1,400 plus points for killing one fully loaded bomber, and that's kind of how you stay competitive on that scoreboard, as doing strafing runs on infantry can give you like 100 points or something like that. So not really worth it to go for infantry versus aircraft. Now, another really nice change from the alpha to the beta is that aircraft now have a quick repair function. So if they get disabled or take a little too much damage, you can use that repair function to repair a bunch of your life and also make your plane flyable again. It's a great way to repair while in the action, as repairing was a really boring and slow mechanic before that took you out of the game and was just, you know, boring. You're just sitting there holding the X button trying not to get shot by stuff, and it took forever. This now allows me to stay in the action constantly, and if I'm just in the action long enough, I can do multiple repairs in a row and just keep my plane at full health. Another nice change is that small arms fire on the ground doesn't disable my planes as quickly. You can still do damage to aircraft with small arms fire, but it won't affect my flight trajectory as strongly as it did in the alpha, which was a kind of big criticism of mine, as just about anybody with a small rifle could mess up your flight pattern if you're in an airplane. And this made it very hard to do strafing runs on infantry. As long as they were just willing to put a few rounds into you, they could totally throw off your aim, you'd miss all your shots, and there wasn't a whole lot you could do. Now, if you noticed in that last clip, I was able to take out a lightly armored truck and get quite a few points for that. The rockets can do pretty good damage to lightly armored targets. Heavily armored targets, on the other hand, the rockets barely do anything. They will do something, so you can assist with tank takedowns, but even on some of my best strafes where I hit just about every single rocket, I was only doing like 15% damage to a tank. And the rockets take quite a while to recharge, so doing multiple strafing runs to take down a tank isn't really a realistic option, but you can assist, especially if you see your teammates going for it. You can be sort of the deciding factor to maybe finish one off. And of course, when you run out of air targets, it does make sense to go for infantry targets. I primarily just focused on trying to hit them with rockets. You can take them out with your primary guns, but it's harder. Taking out people in stationary emplacements is also pretty easy to do, and I felt like I was actually helping out my team a lot, as taking out a stationary cannon will definitely aid your friendly tank drivers. Now, definitely on this map, one of your biggest threats is the anti-air cannon on the armored train. Your rockets actually don't really do any damage anymore to the armored train, which is very different from my experience at Gamescom, where they did a huge amount of damage. And as tempting as it can be to do strafing runs on that train, you're not really contributing much, so I would just recommend focusing on the air and trying to keep your distance. Overall, I have to say that I'm absolutely loving fighter combat right now. I don't really enjoy playing the other planes as much. I think DICE has a bit of balancing to do with them and maybe making them a bit more effective and engaging ground targets, but it's definitely a good start, and getting away from lock-ons is like a dream come true to me. I think I'm going to be flying a lot more in Battlefield 1. Anyway, if you haven't tried out flying, or if you used to fly in Battlefield but kind of got tired of it because of all the crazy lock-ons, get back into it in Battlefield 1. It's an incredibly rewarding experience. I hope you guys enjoyed this bomber killer loadout overview, and as always, I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.